Welcome to an all-new episode of SJHL Insider. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jeromy, Corrigan, Director of Media for the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. We have a great episode planned for SJHL Insider as always. Of course, we are going to recap the last few days in the SJHL, a handful of games to get to. We're also going to be joined by the play-by-play voice of the Ronge Ice Wolves, Braden Malsbury, as he is back in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League after a couple of year hiatus. So we'll talk to him, get some insight on the Ronge Ice Wolves, and much, much more. But of course, before we get started with today's show, we have to give a big shout out to all of our great sponsors here at the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League: Chevrolet, Capital Auto Mall, Cantera Seeds, RBC, SaskTel, SGU, Direct West, Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, who present all of our coaches' conversations throughout the season, Tourism Saskatchewan, Young's Equipment, and SGI. Thank you so much for all your support, because again, without the support, these shows would not be possible. And returning back to the program this week is our good friend Clark Munroe. Clark, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Good to be back.
That's good to have you back, of course.
Yes.
Last week, you were taking care of the little one.
Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff going on in the house lately.
It's flu season.
It's flu season. The kids are in and out of school, daycare, and all that fun stuff.
Happen.
So, maybe, I'm fighting some stuff off myself, but we're here. We're good. We're having a good time.
Mm-hmm. And we're back and ready to preview another. It's going to be a busy weekend in the SJHL, as always. But before we preview the weekend, we have some recapping to do, and I'll let you. You were disappointed last week. I got to do it, but I'll let you do the honors for our opening segment.
I just wanted to give a quick thank you, Jeromy, for at least expressing the fact that I would be upset that you were doing it last week. I did watch the episode, and it did hurt me a little bit. So I'm glad to be back for the hat trick.
There it is. The hats. They're back. Wow. You love them. You love them.
You got to love the hat trick every time. And we're gonna kick it off with our first topic, of course, as you mentioned, a recap. There hasn't been that many games, but we will go back to Tuesday. Let's start up at Centennial Arena in Nipawin, Jeromy.
I think, I would say for a Tuesday, though, it was a pretty busy night.
You're right.
I mean, you get 4 games on a Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah, that doesn't happen too often. Yes, the Nipawin Hawks extended their winning streak to 6 games with a 5-2 win over Yorkton. Weyburn with the come-from-behind win to extend their winning streak. They beat the Kindersley Clippers 6-4. Melfort earning a big 2 points in regulation, and I think that's going to be a theme, for the rest of the season, how important regulation wins are. But a 5-4 win for Melfort over Flin Flon in regulation. And boy, oh boy, the Balfour North Stars bouncing back in a big way, winning 9-3 over the Ronge Ice Wolves Tuesday. And then last night, just down the highway in Wilcox, the Kindersley Clippers picking up their first road win of the season. I'm sure they were tired of hearing the storyline of the fact that they haven't won a game on the road this year, but they knock off the Notre Dame Hounds by a score of 6-2. Where would you like to start?
Right there. I think Kindersley getting their first road win. I think that's an awesome storyline. And I know that we'll get to Tuesday, because obviously there was some big stuff that happened on Tuesday. But how often this season so far on Insider or Weekly have we mentioned, the Clippers got to win a couple games on the road here. We got to get that. And now that they've got that monkey off the back, I just imagine there's just a weight off the shoulders type of feeling across the entire team. It's got to feel good.
And to call, just to add to that, I think they also deserved a bit of a better fate on Tuesday in Weyburn, because they were leading that game going into the third period by a score of 3-1, I do believe, going into the third period. And I'm sure they would have liked to have gotten a win in that game. But I'd like to go back into, obviously, with that win, Weyburn, they're red hot right now. They've won 4 straight, and actually now have a bit of a cushion on the 8th and final playoff spot, 4 points ahead of the Notre Dame Hounds. But of course, the Hounds do have 1 game in hand, but still, they have a bit of cushion, just a little bit of cushion for that 8th and final playoff spot for the race for 8th.
Yeah, and that is it is heating up, and I love how it's all kind of falling together, because right before the January 10th trade deadline, even in earlier in January than that, even on this show and other shows, we were talking about how Weyburn's made some moves to really push them into that last spot in the playoffs, at least, and it didn't click immediately, but you slowly started to see them bringing it together, coming together. Certain guys are starting to play together really well. Ty Mason, Riley Morgan come to mind off the top of my head. Matteo Turin is having a great season as well. in that role. I think they're all playing together, the three of them, if not mistaken, most nights.
For the most part. I think lately, though, I think Cody Mapes has decided let's split them up, because we've seen Jackson Hassman then be elevated to play with Riley Morgan and Ty Mason. And of course, I think you also have to mention Jacob Kalen, because he's been outstanding really 100%. The last month. I mean, going into this week, he had scored in 7 of his last 8 games. Like, he's been playing very well. Their top 6 has been outstanding this past month for them.
So we've seen that kind of battle for 8th, where Weyburn was a little bit down at one point before around the Christmas break time, and they've really picked it up, and they've been playing some great. I think Rory actually said it on Weekly this week. They've been playing some really, really great hockey.
Yeah,
so it's good to see.
The final thing I would say for Weyburn is the fact too that when you look at their schedule for the rest of the season, you have a lot of games against teams around you in the standings. Exactly, a lot of games against Notre Dame, Yorkton, Melville. I mean, they had last weekend, they played a home and home with Melville, and the fact that you earned 2 wins, that's a big 4 points. But then also the fact that you actually get to play a lot of home games, and they're a very good team at Crescent Point Place.
Those Wings fans, they'll get you.
They'll get you, and I mean, they've been really good there. Of course, they're on a 4-game winning streak. They're 7-3 in their last 10, and the Wings have I'm not going to say a big cushion, a little bit of a cushion on the 8th and final playoff spot. The other team we have to talk about when it comes to red hot teams is the Nipawin Hawks, and the team we were talking about. If you want to talk about cushions, now here's what I'll say with this. Before we were talking about how 7 and 8 when it comes to playoff spots, those were the spots that were definitely up for grabs. But now the Nipawin Hawks definitely have a 13-point cushion on a playoff spot right now because of their recent play. They are on a 6-game winning streak. They're 8-2 in their last 10.
Crazy. And
all of a sudden, they're only 5 points back of the 6th place Estevan Bruins, and the Hawks have 3 games in hand. It's been an incredible run, really, since the holiday break for the Nipawin Hawks.
It has, and it was one of those things early. I remember we were early this season. The trends with the Hawks has been really interesting to watch throughout the year. They started off, scoring a lot of goals. They were in some really interesting games. They've made some changes to their roster. Obviously, they got younger early on, and then they've added kind of throughout since.
Right.
And the way Tad Cozen's kind of put this team together, they were the divide between the top 6 and the bottom 6 for such a long time, and now they've almost made it a top 7, bottom 5. The way that they've kind of played, especially in the last 10, like you said, 8-2, they've almost pushed them. They have basically gotten to that point where they've pushed themselves into that conversation now, and great for them. I mean, just to watch them burn through the last 10 games the way that they have has been fantastic, and who knows how much higher they can push this and put some pressure on some of those teams ahead of them.
For sure, and I think this is actually a perfect segue to our second point on the hat trick.
Yes, so let's get into that, because obviously we're talking about it. We might as well just go right into it. The SJHL standings update as of today, and you kind of said there's some storylines. We've already talked about a couple of them, but I guess from the ones we have talked about and the ones we haven't, what stands out to you the most at the moment?
Well, I think
there's a few.
Let's touch on. We've talked about 7th and 8th.
Yeah.
Let's focus. I think with the standings outlook, let's focus on from 2 to 6, because from 2 to 6, it's funny. Each week we talk about how from 2 to 6 it's so close.
Yeah, it has been for a long time now too.
It has. But it seems like it's always 5 points separating these teams. Nobody has gone too far ahead, and that gap has not been narrowed. So just for a rundown, right now going into this weekend, the Ronge Ice Wolves are in 2nd place with a 25-14 3-1 record. The unfortunate thing for Ronge is they have them and the Estevan Bruins are tied for the most games played in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League with 43. And then the teams that are just right behind Ronge, only a couple points back, they have lots of games in hand. You have the Humboldt Broncos, 26-11, 1-0, 53 points.
Flin Flon, teams too.
24-11, 2-1, 51 points. Melfort, 21-12, 5-2, 49 points. And then the Estevan Bruins, 23-17, 1-2, good for 49 points. I think the race for home ice advantage between 2 and 6, I think is going to be, first off, it's going to be fascinating down the stretch to pay attention to. But I think secondly, you're going to look at that race, and I think home ice is definitely, it's always valuable, but I think for some teams in that grouping, it's more valuable than others.
Absolutely. I think that's totally a great point. Is it too early to maybe make this a Nipawin Hawks conversation as well? Like, with the way that they're playing, they got 3 games in hand as well on Estevan.
For home ice?
I mean, they're only
I would say
6-7 points back right now.
Sure, but they've played the same amount of games as a team like Flin Flon and Humboldt, so I think that is a bit of a stretch right now.
Uphill battle for sure, but
it's a bit of a stretch.
It's something that maybe just keep it in the back of your minds for the next couple weeks, because if they have another hot week or two, who knows where they could be. But yeah, the home ice advantage thing, it's going to be so huge, because junior hockey, we have always talked about this, when the playoffs start in junior hockey, Barnes, especially the ones that we're talking about here, those crowds are so important. They play such a huge role. They boost these kids so much. And there's a few rinks that we all know are a little bit harder to play in, and for one reason or the other. I think teams are going to want to fight to get their own home ice advantage for sure. That's going to be a huge storyline going forward for sure.
Well, and the other thing too is, and the average fan might not know this, but of course, not every rink has the same dimensions in the SJHL,
right,
which also makes home ice advantage even more valuable when it comes to the playoffs. But that's a brief Coles. I'm sure, honestly, we could probably spend the whole episode just talking about the current standings.
Would love to.
But we're not going to, because I don't think people want to listen to that for an hour. So we'll move on to point 3.
Point 3, yes. Okay, so obviously it was about, what was it? It was about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago now, that we made the league, I should say, not us specifically, but the league made the announcement of the SJHL Showcase, MJHL Showcase rosters, and I guess we just want to do a little bit of a preview here for that today, with it coming up. It's around the corner here. So
it's literally next week. It's Tuesday and Wednesday. If you want to catch out all the action from the SJHL MJHL Showcase, of course, you can watch all of the games on Hockey TV. Off the top of my head, the games are at 12, 3, and 6, both days, Tuesday and Wednesday. Of course, each team, Team Gold U20, Team White U20, and Team Blue U18, both teams will play 2 games against the MJHL, 2 U20 teams, and the U18 team. And it's the first time it's pretty cool that it's finally getting a chance to actually go to the MJHL. Don't get me wrong. From the SJHL, we love hosting it.
Yeah.
But I think, only to be fair, I think it's good to see that our friends to the east in Manitoba finally get a chance to host this event. And of course, it's been a tough couple of years.
For sure, yeah.
For the event not be able to take place. But this is going to be a huge scouting opportunity, obviously, for all the great talent in both leagues. And yeah, you can catch all the action on Hockey TV. The big reason why I wanted to talk about this, because we had talked about it on SJHL Weekly with myself, Rory, and Jamie, but I wanted to ask you this. What are you most I know you're not physically going to the showcase, but I'm sure you'll be tuned in. But what are you most looking forward to when it comes to the showcase?
There's a few kids on these teams that don't have scholarships yet, and I think the one thing that I really want to see come out of this is some of those kids getting some recognition that they rightly deserve. There are some really good players on all 3 of these teams, and I'm not even going to mention the ones on the Manitoba teams, because obviously same boat over there.
Yep, 100%.
But there are some very good players on these teams that I think I want to see them show off a little bit. You know what I mean? Like play really well amongst their peers that do have scholarships, and kind of show that, hey, I'm right there with these guys. Maybe I'm better than these guys, or I'm showing up this week, and all it takes is 1 or 2 scouts to catch their eye, and all of a sudden these guys are writing their names on some paper, on some commitments. But that's what I'm looking forward to. I want to see. I don't know the exact number, but there's about half or so that probably are going to get good looks out of this that don't currently have sponsorships. So I don't know what the exact number is.
Scholarships.
Yeah, commitments, scholarships, etc. So I'm really looking forward to that group showing up.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think any player from either side, SJHL or MJHL, who is not committed yet, is going to get a very good look.
Very good.
From whether it be NCAA Division 1, Division 3, U Sport, etc. They're going to get an amazing look, and I wouldn't be surprised if, a week or so after the showcase, we will see some more direct West commitments coming out of it.
Bit of a domino effect.
Well, especially, I think we talked about it too on SJHL Weekly, but I mean, you look at that U18 team.
Oh my gosh.
And you can make an argument for all those players too. And all of those players, and a couple of them already do, but have NCAA Division I scholarships.
Yeah, no, that's what exactly.
It's a loaded team. I mean, all three teams are very loaded. But.
Yeah, I think I'm looking through these lists right now. Like I'm scrolling through. I'm trying to see, is there a player that I think every one of these players that they picked the
there's
team's
no
great.
point, in my opinion. There's no point really singling them out because I think they're all good.
No, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say, though. I don't see a player that on these lists that I think. Well, I don't think that they. Maybe they all deserve to be there, and they all I think deserve a look at the next level as well.
Well, time will tell.
They're that good.
Time will tell. And of course, the SJHL MJHL Showcase is set for next week in Winnipeg. The teams practice on Monday, and the games take place Tuesday, Wednesday, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, all on Hockey TV, where you can catch the action. And it's now time to head to our video chat line, where we are pleased to be joined by the voice of the Ronge Ice Wolves, Braden Malsbury. There he is on the screen. Braden, how are we doing today?
I'm doing well, Corgs. Great to see your smiling face, as always. And that Clark guy, too.
Yeah, Clark's okay. Great to see you, too, Malls. You know what? First and foremost, before I get to Tuesday night's game between the Ice Wolves and the Stars, I just want to ask you, you're back in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League after a couple of years away. How does it feel to be not only back in the SJHL, but back in La Ronge?
It's going well. It's great to be back. Obviously, I was here for about 7 years before I had a stint there in the AJHL last year. But good to be back. Good to see some familiar faces. And hey, the hockey on the ice has been sensational, too, for this Ice Wolves group, so can't complain about that as well.
I don't want to bring up Tuesday's game because it was a tough result for the La Ronge Ice Wolves, but I'll ask you. I usually ask the most recent game. What was your thoughts on that game against the North Stars on Tuesday, where the Ice Wolves fell 9-3?
Well, I think, Corgs, it was just one of those games where everything was going wrong. Right. For the La Ronge Ice Wolves. It just seemed like any shot was unfortunately going in if you're an Ice Wolves supporter. But I think that's one the Wolves will quickly forget about, probably burn the game tape and get set for a home and home with the Nipwood Hawks. And it all starts on Friday night here at the Mel Hagelin. So I would expect a big response from La Ronge. They're not going to be happy about the way that they played, and it should be a fun weekend of hockey with the Hawks too.
Well, and especially, too, coming off the previous week, where the Ice Wolves get 7 out of a possible 8 points, played some very good hockey, lost to the Battle North Stars in overtime, but then rattled off 3 straight wins, 2 against Estevan and 1 against Notre Dame. They had a lot of positives going into that game on Tuesday. So Tuesday, I don't think is a good reflective of how this team is playing as of late. It's more or less last week, the previous week, is how well they're playing.
Yeah, coming into that game Tuesday, Jeromy, in North Battleford, the Ice Wolves had won 3 in a row. And not only did they pick up 7 out of a possible 8 points in their previous 4 meetings, they had points in 5 straight because they pasted the Melville Millionaires the weekend before. So there were a lot of positives, and the Ice Wolves were certainly rolling, but a tough one on Tuesday. But as I mentioned, they'll look to rebound this weekend, 2 big matchups with division rival Nipawin, who has been playing real well, 6-game win streak for them, entering the game Friday night.
Now, despite the results on Tuesday, I mean, both Topher Chirico and Dawson Smith have been outstanding for the Ice Wolves this season. I mean, since rejoining the Ice Wolves, what have you made of both the goaltenders?
Well, it's really one of those situations, Corgs, where it's a 1A and 1B situation for the La Ronge Ice Wolves coaching staff. I mean, they can go to any guy any given night. You look at the weekend series against the Estevan Bruins. Topher Chirico was so hot, they kept him in the net, and he beat the Bruins on back-to-back nights, including that shootout win where he stopped all 3 Estevan shooters. And then you look at Dawson Smith. He's been one of the best goalies statistically in the SJHL all season long. So it's really been one of the pillars of strengths for this Ice Wolves group this season, that they have two quality goaltenders, and they are not afraid to throw anyone in the net on any given night and expect results, because both Topher Cherico and Dawson Smith have been red hot all season long in the Ice Wolves crease.
Yeah, and Dawson Smith, of course, is going to be representing the Ice Wolves at the SJHL MJHL Showcase next week. Another player I wanted to ask you about, Malls, is Liam McInnes, recently named Super U Defenseman of the Week. What have you made of his impact to this Ice Wolves lineup, in the fact that, you know, he was out for a good portion of the season, but, I mean, in 14 games this year, he's above a point per game player.
Yeah, he's a guy that can really snap the puck around and, you know, kind of one of their power play quarterbacks. But not only does he bring an offensive punch, we saw it on Tuesday night in North Battleford, gets in a fight, and he's pretty physical all night long. And he's been outstanding since, you know, rejoining the Ice Wolves, as he had not played since October, when he got back into the lineup early January. But he's really one of the straws that can stir the drink on the back end for the Ice Wolves, no question.
Now, you touched on it a little bit. It's a big weekend, I would say, for both the Ronge Ice Wolves and the Nipawin Hawks. Of course, you touched on it. Nipawin's surging right now. They've won 6 straight games. The Ice Wolves are playing some good hockey. Recently, just a couple of weeks ago, you saw the Nipawin Hawks come into the Mel, and they picked up a 3-2 win. What do you expect from this matchup this weekend?
Well, the Nipawin Hawks have played the Ice Wolves well all season long. I believe the season series is tied at 2, so I would expect a tight game. Mm-hmm. It certainly was the last time the Ice Wolves met up with them. Unfortunately for the Ice Wolves, maybe it was a case of execution. The last game against Nipawin had a lot of chances, but just could not find the back of the net. So, you know, I would expect another physical affair, a division rival, and I would expect a close game as well. Both of the games, I would say, will be close. Looks like Nipawin has really started heating up, as we touched on, 6-game win streak, and they've, you know, made some acquisitions and kind of steadied the ship here as of late, as they look to, you know, climb the standings and get a higher seeding as they look for a playoff spot.
Of course, you know, down the stretch, points are going to be at a premium. Of course, the Ice Wolves are in that mix between 2 and 6, fighting for home ice advantage in the playoffs. But looking at the schedule for the Ice Wolves, after this home and home, the month of February, you know, the Ice Wolves are going to be on the road for the majority of the month of February, except for one home game at the end of the month. How difficult is that going to be for the Ice Wolves in the month of February?
Well, I think the good news, Jeromy, for the Ice Wolves is their schedule gets a bit easier, not to take anything away from their opponents. But you look at that Southern road trip, they will play Weyburn once, Melville twice, and Notre Dame. And, you know, every game's tough in the SJHL, but the Wolves have to, you know, make hay while the sun is shining. And then they'll get a weekend series in Kindersley against the Clippers. So those are games I feel like the Ice Wolves have to come out with 2 points. And then it does get a little tougher down the stretch, as they'll take on Melfort 3 more times, Flin Flon a couple of times. But it was a busy weekend last week. Ice Wolves took on North Battleford at home. They get a point in that one. Estevan, they're a good club. They've been playing some decent hockey as of late, and they take 4 points from the Bruins. So I think, you know, the Ice Wolves have a lot of confidence on those southern trips. The last 4 and 5 road trip, they went 3-1. And quite honestly, I thought played well enough to get a win at Estevan despite being shut out. It was just one of those nights where they could not find a way to beat the goaltender Cam Herdlicka, who's been one of the best, I think, in the SJ this season. But I think the Ice will have a lot of confidence on the road and especially at home. So, you know, they got a busy weekend with Nipawin twice this weekend. And then, as you mentioned, they will have to play Road Warriors after this weekend. The Ice Wolves only have 2 home games remaining.
Yeah, pack a big suitcase for those road trips, Malls. Final question for you. You know, Malls, like me, you've been around junior hockey for, 10 plus years. When you look at the standings in the SJHL this year and you see the parity in the league, have you ever seen anything like this in your time in junior hockey?
I think the 2019-20 season, it was very tight. The Ice Wolves finished a point out of I know that was a real dogfight down the stretch. But besides that year, I can't remember a year where you look at the standings after each night and they changed so much. There was times where the Ice Wolves were in second, then they were in third and fourth and fifth, and now back into second. It's been crazy, but I know it's going to make for some fun hockey in the last month or so of this SJHL season, and looking forward to it. And I know the Ice Wolves are as well. A lot of big games here coming up.
Yeah, the next month and a half are going to be very interesting in the SJHL for sure. Mals, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it as always, and have a great call this weekend.
Thank you, and we'll see you down south here soon, Jeromy.
Yes, we'll see you shortly. That is the play-by-play voice of the Ronge Ice Wolves, Braden Malsbury. Of course, the Ice Wolves and the Hawks clash this weekend, a home set between the Ice Wolves and the Hawks. And you know what, Clark? I'll say this. You want to play this game? If the playoffs started today, guess what? This would be a first-round series.
This would be a first-round series.
Of course, Ronge has played a lot more games and everything like that, but 2 versus 7 matchup between the Ice Wolves and the Hawks. And Braden's right. This season series has been very tight between these two teams. He was right. The season series is at 2 games aside.
Right.
Each team's won in the other team's building.
Yeah.
Each team's 1-1 on the road. So it's going to be a great matchup.
Sounds like the makings of a great playoff series.
Well, and the fact that they're division rivals too.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt either.
They're division rivals, and quite frankly, any matchup in that division.
Oh, of course, yeah. We've been saying that all year.
We've been saying it, and yeah. I'm gonna go back all the way to the season preview, the debut episode of SJHL Insider, and I will always give credit where credit's due, and we're gonna give credit to the play-by-play voice of the Melfort Mustangs. When he previewed this division, he said, and I quote, maybe I might be off word for word, but he said, "I wouldn't be surprised if all 4 teams in the Sherwood division make the playoffs." And
well done, Matthew.
And it looks like that is going to be the case. I don't know if we have a prize to award him at the end of the season.
We already gave Benny the flamingos.
Benny's got the flamingos.
I don't know where those are anymore.
Now we mailed them.
We did?
Yeah, we mailed them to Benny. Benny, they're coming in the mail. Your flamingos.
My poor flamingos.
From your Christmas present. But yeah, the entire Sherwood division I think is pretty incredible when you think about it. When from top to bottom, only set between LaRange and Nipawin, they're only separated by 10 points. But I mean, when you have LaRange at 54, Flin Flon 51, Melfort 49, and of course Nipawin at 4 games above 500 now, thanks to their 6-game winning streak at 44. What a division!
Well, and I look at the goal differentials too, right? And I guess Nipawin, they're still a -2 in that regard, but they still have one of the highest scoring teams in the league.
Right.
They've scored more goals than Flin Flon has, for example, now in a couple more games. Mm-hmm. But the goal differentials are all quite positive in that division. Right. And Nipawin has stormed back a little bit because I think at one point they were maybe a little bit deeper in that, but they've climbed out of it with some of the additions that they've made, and with reigning goalie of the week Jackson Fellner getting in there and doing his thing, and they've been bringing it together throughout the season and gelling and
well, think about it. Think about their last 4 games.
Yeah,
they've all 4 games. They only allowed 2 goals, and I think you're
good key to success.
You are going to win a lot of hockey games if you only allow 2 goals or less.
Yeah.
So I mean, the Nipawin Hawks.
Good formula.
We talked about at the beginning of the year when they were struggling a little bit about keeping pucks out of the back of the net.
Yeah.
Whatever they're doing, whatever Tad Kozin and company are doing, it is working, and they are playing some great hockey, and those are going to be some great matchups this weekend in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. So we kind of teased it a bit, but it is a busy weekend. We talked about LaRange and Nipawin, but let's take a look. Let's preview this weekend. 6 games Friday, 5 games Saturday.
Jeez.
Holy moly.
Sunday off, or are we good?
Yep, Sunday's off. Sunday we're good. We're good. Sunday we're good.
All right.
We're good. So Friday, Melfort at Weyburn. Weyburn looks to extend their winning streak to 5 games and looking to try and extend that lead on 8th place. And that would be, of course, Melfort fighting for points in that battle between 2 and 6. Going to be a great matchup at the Crescent Point Place. Humboldt's at Melville. Humboldt looking to extend their winning streak to 5 games. Melville looking to snap a 5-game losing streak. Battleford's hitting the road. They'll take on the Yorkton Terriers. Remember those great matchups in Yorkton before Christmas between Battleford and Yorkton? Despite the two teams being so far apart in the standings, boy, oh boy, those two teams
made them sweat a little bit, those games, for sure.
Did, for sure. Nipawin, of course, at Ronge. We already touched on it a bit. Kindersley's going to be at Notre Dame. Once again, a rematch. You know the Hounds are going to be wanting to play a much better game and, of course, get a valuable 2 points again at the Duncan McNeil Arena. And then finally, Friday night, the Estevan Bruins visit the Flin Flon Bombers. The first time since last year's final, those two teams meet at the Whitney Forum. Those are going to be 2 great games up there. Of course, now we go to Saturday, and of course, there's the rematch, Estevan and Flin Flon at the Whitney Forum on Saturday as well. So 2 games at the Whit between those two teams. Should be a lot of fun. Battlefords will play Melville the second half of Ronge and Nipawin, this time at the Cage in Nipawin. Kindersley will wrap up 4 and 5 back in Weyburn on Saturday against the Wings. And then another really good matchup, Humboldt at Melfort. I mean, they just played a home and home just a couple of weekends ago. Both teams won a game, and both teams in that home and home, I thought it was partially funny. Both teams won by 4 goals on home ice, but always a great matchup between those two teams.
The Battle of the Horses.
The Battle of the Horses. So saddle up. It's going to be a good
saddle
one.
Up.
I'll ask you, like I always ask you to close out the show, but what is your game of the weekend?
It's there's a couple, like the home and homes.
You get to pick one.
I know. I know.
One. You can't just say the entire schedule.
Every game is equally
yes, I know,
to me.
but you have to pick out one. That's where you have to become an insider and pick one.
That's fair. I'm going to go game, if I have to be specific, game 2 of the Estevan Flin Flon.
You could have just said
series.
Estevan Flin Flon. That's fine.
That's what I mean. They're home and home series. But Estevan Flin Flon, I mean, both of those teams, I mean, like you said, we saw them earlier in the year in Estevan.
Way middle October,
ago. And both of those teams have changed, I feel like, a lot since then.
Yes.
And both teams have gone through really good stretches. Mm-hmm. They've had, pockets of struggles, but every team does. Mm-hmm. And I just think that this is kind of a big proving ground weekend. I think talk about a couple of tough weekends in a row for Estevan.
100%.
Ronge and then Flin Flon,
and just
right?
worth mentioning, part of the reason why Estevan's out on the road right now is because of the provincial curling championship going on at Affinity Place in Estevan too. Yep. So they kind of got kicked out of the building for a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Great point. Now here's one storyline that could come out of this weekend in that home and home series. Estevan currently sits in 6th. We know this. We talked about this. And Flin Flon currently sits in 4th. We talked about that. Depending on how it goes, if Estevan happens to, and I'm not saying anything necessarily, just if they happen to lose both games and Flin Flon happens to win both games, that could push this into the conversation we had earlier about Ronge Nipawin as a potential first round matchup in the SJHL.
That's the thing. The last month, I think we've definitely put an emphasis on the race between 2 and 6. I think one thing we haven't touched on though with that race between 2 and 6 is the fact that there's going to be the 3 versus 6 matchup and the 4 versus 5 matchup in the SJHL.
Yeah.
Holy.
Those are going to be juggernauts.
And you're getting to a point where you can argue 2 through 7 and even 1 through 8 with the way Weyburn's been playing if they're the team that falls. The playoffs this year in the SJHL are going to be must-see hockey.
I can't stop thinking about it. Every time I look at the standings, my brain goes there.
Yeah. One day at a time.
I know, and I have to pull myself back. I have to rein myself in.
We still have a month and a half.
And it's great.
My big point,
and it can change so much every single weekend.
And here's my big point that I want to make. I think out of any team in the SJHL this weekend, if you said which this weekend, who's it most important to?
Oh, yep.
I would say Estevan.
I think that has to be.
I would say Estevan,
answer.
And this is why. You have 2 games against a team that you are battling with in between 2 and 6. It's well documented how many games you've played.
Yep.
them and Ronge will be tied by the end of this weekend. They will be tied for the most games played in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League with 45.
Right.
Bruins are off until February 10th.
They don't have a chance to really.
Bruins are off until
Right.
February 10th.
I didn't think of that part.
So there will be teams making up ground, i.e., potentially the Nipawin Hawks.
Nipawin Hawks.
And who do they play on February 10th?
Is it the battle of the black and yellows?
The Nipawin Hawks.
The Wiz Khalifa
So,
battle?
stop.
It's trademark copyright.
Yes.
Sorry.
I think it's a very important weekend for them. I don't know if they can afford to only get 1 out of a possible 4 points like they did last weekend, especially back-to-back weekends going up north. I think for Estevan, you're definitely got to get a split this weekend.
100%. Definitely. Yeah. A split would be huge. And honestly, a bit of a message sending weekend if they can get 2, obviously. Because, like I said, they had some changes around the trade deadline and some injuries. Like we saw Cam Herdlicka obviously missed a few games. He came back.
Right.
So, we know how important he was for this team in the first half of the season. And we'll see him come back into form, I'm sure, very soon. So is he going to make a statement this week? This weekend, I should say. And there's a lot of things going on with both those teams. But yeah, you're right. That the storylines surrounding that specific home and home are
It's not a home and home. It's only in Flin Flon. Could you imagine?
It's a home and home for Flin Flon.
If you imagine they had to play a home and home, like a legitimate home and home Friday, Saturday.
Yeah, back-to-back days.
I wouldn't have
home and home, both home being home for Flin Flon.
It's just a doubleheader. Doubleheader. There you go.
Doubleheader.
So
they do it in baseball all the time.
Because you'd said Flin Flon and Estevan.
Yeah.
I will say I'm going to say Ronge and Nipawin.
Yeah.
Because with how well Nipawin's played down the stretch, or this whole month, they've only lost 1 game since the holiday break. And that was a 1-goal game to the Melfort Mustangs at home.
Craziness.
They have played some really good hockey. And you want to play the hypothetical game.
I love hypothetical games.
I know you do. That's why I bring it up. What if they sweep Ronge this weekend?
Yeah.
That could make it even more interesting. But I think I think Ronge is going to be looking to they're going to be very motivated tomorrow night after that 9-3 loss to Battleford on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I don't think that's reflective of how
that was
the team
kick in the pants.
I also think Battleford was a little upset after 2 losses.
They just got kicked in the pants too.
Sure.
So then they decided I'm going to do some pants kicking. If I can throw one honorable mention in.
Well, can I finish my thought?
Yes.
That'd be nice. Yeah. Well, I think too with Ronge is tomorrow night's game, Friday night, is their last home game for a month.
Right. Yeah. When Malls said that in the interview just now, I was like,
their next home game after that isn't until February 25th.
Yeah. And I guess like if you really look at it, there aren't in the grand scheme of things, there aren't that many games left. So when he said there's only, did he say 2 home games left?
So after this Friday.
After this weekend?
In total, they have 3 home games left.
Right.
They have tomorrow night against Nipawin.
Yeah.
February 25th against the Melfort Mustangs. And then March 10th, where they are home
like
to
the last day of
the Flin Flon Bombers.
Pretty much. Yeah.
No, I looked it up before the interview with Malls, and I couldn't believe their month of February because, like I said, after tonight or after Friday night, 8 straight road games.
Yeah.
Where you go Nipawin, Weyburn, Melville, Notre Dame, Melville, Kindersley.
Yeah.
And like Malls said, like, here's the thing, like, all those teams are yes, they are below the Ice Wolves.
Are below the Ice Wolves.
All those teams are below the Ice Wolves in the standings.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's always very difficult to win on the road, especially those southern swings for the northern teams
too.
Right. So I think Friday is going to be a very important game for the Ice Wolves this weekend.
I agree.
All right. What is your honorable mention?
My honorable mention is that Friday night game, Weyburn and Melfort.
Yes, I agree.
Weyburn 7-3 in their last 10.
Yep.
4 straight wins, like you mentioned that earlier. And with Melfort, I mean, their past 10 and their streak on the standings page are 2 very different things. They're 2-0-0-1 in their last 3, which is by all conventions pretty good. But they're 5-4-0-1 in their last 10. So after that hot streak that they were on, that we
Sure.
that we were all talking about so much, they've kind of simmered a little bit. And it's not saying that they're playing bad; they're not.
But even
if
Ben
Weyburn-
Tkachuk said that on when
Yeah.
he joined us on SJHL Weekly 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
He said right before the holiday break, he felt like the team wasn't, they kind of got away a little bit from where they were, how they were playing, the style they were playing. And since then, it's really been a roller coaster ride for the Melfort Mustangs.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if Weyburn can take advantage of the way that they're playing right now,
Yep.
and that's a big win if they can figure that one out and get that one.
Well, that's a confidence booster for
It's
sure.
a huge one. So I'm going to say that's my honorable mention. It might even end up being my number one pick at the end of the weekend.
Regardless, I mean, I think there's 11 very good games on the schedule
Fantastic.
in the SJHL this weekend. And of course, be sure to get out to your local rink this weekend because, like we said, there are a lot of great games. If you can't, of course, you can catch all the action on Hockey TV this weekend. You can still get your subscription. I think it's only $29.99 a month.
Get on it.
The value is there. You get every single SJHL game. It's awesome. It's awesome. That's how I spend my Friday night usually.
I always tune in.
Flipping through the games and
Yeah.
all that stuff. But of course, if you don't have a subscription, if you can't make it out to the games, you can catch all the highlights from all the games on the SJHL YouTube page. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and help support the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. And of course, stay up to date with everything in the SJHL. But also like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your social media or in just your news in the social media world, because everyone's different.
Everyone.
What's your favorite social media?
Well, our TikTok channel that we've put together on the SJHL has been a lot of fun. And I think
I just meant, what's your favorite social media? TikTok?
I say TikTok
Okay,
is
fair
it's
enough.
kind of all encompassing.
Okay, sure.
But Twitter is where I get my like headlines and news and stuff for the most part.
So are you saying TikTok or Twitter?
Twik-twok.
Terrible.
Sorry, I'm a dad.
Hey, here's a final question for you, though. Have you picked up a certain gift for one of your family members yet, Clark?
Yes. I am. It's on my to-do list. I haven't done it yet.
Well,
but
of course.
I am definitely going to be doing that right away because there are some occasions coming up for me that I need to handle. So
It's true.
Yes.
So if you're looking for a gift for somebody in your life, of course, the Polaris side-by-side SJHL raffle is well underway. You can get more information at sjhlraffle.ca. Tickets are available now, 1 for $25, 3 for $60, 10 for $100. The deadline to purchase tickets is April 23rd, and the draw will take place April 27th on SJHL Insider live.
That's this show.
And it sounds like it's going to be from the Polaris dealership.
Let's get it.
So it'll be a lot of fun. So get your tickets today. There's only 5,000 tickets available while supplies last. So
go.
get your tickets today. SJHLraffle.ca. Any more information you need, head there. SJHLraffle.ca. Before we go, let's thank our sponsors once again because they are awesome. And without their support, this show, SJHL Weekly, all the stuff we do at the SJHL wouldn't be possible. Chevrolet, Capital Auto Mall, Canterra Seeds, RBC, SaskTel, SGU, Direct West, Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association. I tried to rattle them off too fast.
There's a lot of Saskatchewans.
Tourism Saskatchewan, Young's Equipment, SGI. Thank you. Thank you so much for your support because, again, as I say every show, the shows would not be possible without the great support from our sponsors. So we appreciate it. Thank you so much. 11 games in total in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League this weekend. You can catch all the action on Hockey TV, but if you can, get out to your local rink and support your local team because there's going to be a lot of great games this weekend. For Clark Munroe, my name's Jeromy Corrigan, and this has been another great episode of SJHL Insider. Thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy the games this weekend, everyone.